This is not a kareshi story, but some of you guys have shown interest in this, so this is part 1 of an Iwaizumi and Oikawa doujinshi story. It's called The They Who Live on That Street. In this story, Iwaizumi works as a landscape photographer and Oikawa works as a physiotherapist. Oikawa wakes up and his first thought is, shoot, I'm late. But then he checks his phone and he remembers he has a day off today. He looks down beside him and Iwaizumi is sleeping peacefully, so Oikawa leans down and he blows into his ear. Of course, Iwaizumi immediately smacks him. At breakfast, Oikawa says, because Iwa-chan's sleeping face is just so cute. He says, since you've already sent me to the afterlife, can you make me my eggs? Iwaizumi says, I'm not making them half done. And Oikawa says, please, can you do something about that? They play around a rock, paper, scissors, and it's decided that Oikawa would make the coffee. They finish up their breakfast and say thank you for the meal, and Iwaizumi says, you're cleaning up, right? Thanks. Oikawa says, hold on. Iwaizumi says, I have to finish these photos before noon. Oikawa was about to protest when Iwaizumi kisses him, and instead Oikawa says, please, leave it to me. Iwaizumi says, thanks. By the way, while you're at it, can you do the laundry? Oikawa says, sure, while thinking that pose is so cute. This is part 3 of The They Who Live on That Street. One day, Iwaizumi mentions that he's going to stay in Japan for a while because he won a photography award. Oikawa was like, what? When? And Iwaizumi says, you never show interest in my work anyways. Oikawa wants to see the photo, but Iwaizumi says, no, I'm not showing it to you. The next day, Oikawa asks Matsun, who works at the same hospital. He says, oh, I know that photo. It's in the papers. Oikawa mentions how they don't really pick up the newspapers. Matsun says, well, more importantly, you've always told me not to tell Iwaizumi where you are. After 4 years of hiding, what changed? Oikawa says, well, it was painful. As Oikawa thinks about how his bangs have gotten long, he mentions that there's a time when he avoided Iwaizumi. It was an unrequited love and he wanted to give up. Oikawa asks Iwaizumi to cut his bangs, and Iwaizumi says don't complain if they look bad. After they argue a little, Oikawa notes how Iwaizumi can always find him, no matter how far he runs or how much he hides. Even when they were little, it's almost as if Iwaizumi could sense the SOS signals he sent out. He wonders if his hair is like an antenna, and he kisses his forehead. As Iwaizumi takes off Oikawa's shirt to go do the laundry, Oikawa notices something. There's going to be a part 3.5 because the story's too long. Okay, bye! This is part 3.5 of The They Who Live on That Street. Oikawa notices the stack of newspapers beside him. He pulls them out, and he realizes that the photo that won Iwaizumi the award is of him. Iwaizumi comes back in, and he realizes that Oikawa saw the picture. He blanks out for a moment before both of them freak out. Iwaizumi says, don't kid with me, and Oikawa says, when did you take this? Are you stupid? Iwaizumi says, that's it, I'm beating you up until you forget about this. And Oikawa's like, I thought you liked the mountains and rivers. I thought you couldn't handle people. And Iwaizumi ends up chasing Oikawa around with a frying pan. And this is the final chapter of The They Who Live on That Street. 1 year ago, Iwaizumi got into a really bad accident as he was working as a mountain photographer's assistant. He went to the hospital, and that was where he ran into Oikawa again after 4 years. Oikawa was chosen as a member of the Japan national youth team, but he disappeared 4 years ago after severely injuring his right knee. Iwaizumi hated Oikawa. He wondered why he left him, why he discarded him. But all that blew away the moment he saw Oikawa, and he realized he was in love with him. He says, your bangs, they've gotten longer. It reminded him of a certain summer in high school when he got a feeling that he couldn't quite name and he couldn't quite hold a shape to. Oikawa's flowing brown hair. He was sure that there were other things that changed, but for now, even on a broken leg, he wanted to grab hold of that childhood friend of his. He wondered why they were separated for 4 years, but then he decided it didn't matter. He was just gonna go with the flow. And that was how at 25, Iwaizumi moved to an unknown town. Today, let's do a continuation of the Iwaizumi and Oikawa doujinshi called They Who Live on That Street. This story is called The Street of Which They Live On, and I highly recommend you go check out the first part to get more context. But for a recap, this is a haikyuu timeskip AU story written by Gusari, the creator of Given. It features Iwaizumi as a mountain photographer and Oikawa as a physiotherapist. I also have a fanfiction/writing challenge of the story, so link is in my bio. Iwaizumi is climbing a mountain, and one step at a time, and 1 foot in front of the other, only one word rolls off his mouth over and over again. Even if his head feels dizzy from a lack of oxygen, he always repeats that word. Back in the city, Oikawa was enjoying his beauty sleep when Iwaizumi suddenly crashes onto him. Oikawa's like, ow! Hey, what time is it right now? Iwaizumi tells him it's 5 a.m. and Oikawa's like, I guess welcome home? Long time no see? Iwaizumi mentions that they didn't see each other for a month and that, he wants the deed. Oikawa's like, hey, what about the mood? Now, what is this? Were you craving me? So cute. You're in such a rush. Iwaizumi says, if I punch you in the stomach, will you shut up? Oikawa points out that he's been left alone for a month and that he's pretty antsy too, so it's not fair. But Iwaizumi doesn't really listen. He tells him he'll take care of him later and he tries to pull his shirt off. He then asks Oikawa wasn't he lonely, and Oikawa replies that damn right he was. After some time, Oikawa ended up, tiring Iwaizumi out. He says, and you said you were going to take care of me? Iwaizumi hums, and Oikawa says, now then, where should I get you to take me? Iwaizumi hums again, and Oikawa says, I took lots of days off in correlation of the days you'd be back. Iwaizumi falls asleep, and Oikawa says, honestly, why are you always disappearing? I wish those mountains or rivers or whatever would just go die. There is more to the story, so stay tuned!